Hi, thank you for joining me for this episode. And we want to start looking at anxiety and what do we do about it? How do we get ourselves out of anxiety? And I want to talk to you today about what I call the outside in approach. When I'm talking about the outside in, I'm talking about the outside being the outer world, the environment, the circumstances that we're in, and then moving inward towards the mental and emotional experience. So you start outside with the environment and the conditions in our life. Then we look at our physical body and the physiology and what's going on. And then finally, we work our way into the mind and the emotions. Now, we all know that anxiety is an emotional experience, but it is most often an emotional response to something that's happening in our environment. Something in our environment is triggering us. It's sending a signal to us that we're in danger, and that's why we experience anxiety and stress. So the outside in approach is to look at what's going on in our environment, what's going on in our circumstances that we might be able to change. If we're in a situation or environment that's making us feel anxious and we can get out of that situation, then that should be the first approach that we take. And this can work on any level or situation. If you just find yourself being anxious in certain environments and you can avoid those environments without it negatively impacting your life, if you can remove yourself from a situation, then that's what you should do as the first approach. If you find yourself at a job that you don't like that's causing you all kinds of anxiety, then maybe you need to look for another job. Get your resume updated, start putting your intention out using the law of attraction, and see if you can attract to yourself or find yourself another job that isn't going to be quite as anxiety producing for you. If you're in a relationship that's constantly causing you anxiety because you're with a negative person, be it a friendship or a romantic relationship, and you have the ability to get yourself out of that relationship, then you should take yourself out of that relationship. But let's be honest, there are many times that we cannot simply change our environment and still live a functional, full, and happy life. And we find ourselves in situations where we get anxious. For example, some people just have anxiety around crowds or around people, and they get anxious doing something as simple as going shopping or going to church. That can seriously negatively impact your life and prevent you from functioning. So then the next approach is to look at your physical body and what's going on. Now keep in mind that all anxiety is experienced as feeling because of physiological processes that are taking place in our body. Our brain is literally sending a signal to our body that tells us that there is a threat in our environment that we have to fight or flight, and we go into what's called the parasympathetic nervous system. Our blood pressure goes up, our heart rate increases, our breathing becomes rapid. Some people can find themselves in this situation where they become so anxious they have a full-on panic attack, they begin to hyperventilate, and these kinds of things. But the nice thing about the nervous system and our physiological responses is that we do have considerable control over those physical responses that are going on, especially as we practice. And the way we do that is by examining and beginning with our breathing. When you are anxious, your breathing is one of the first things that people notice, especially if, like I said, they're having a panic attack, is that their breathing begins to change. And breath is one of the automatic processes in our body that is both automatic and voluntary. What I mean by that is that it's automatic and that it goes on without our conscious will or intent, and we can't stop it. But also, we can take control of it at various different moments if we're conscious of it. So when you find yourself feeling anxious and you can't remove yourself from the situation, what you can begin to do is take control of your breathing. Now, when your body is in an anxiety response, your breathing will be rapid and it won't be rhythmic. And by rhythmic, what I mean is you won't have the same length of time that you're breathing in as the same length of time that you're breathing out. And so doing some breath work and practicing breathing before you find yourself in an anxious situation is a good thing to do. So whether you're practicing or whether you find yourself in an anxious situation, what do you do with your breath? Well, it's quite simple. You want to slow your breath down by taking slow, deep breaths, and you want your breaths to be rhythmic. A lot of people recommend that you do what's called square breathing, which is a 4-second breath. So you can take a 4-second or a 5-second breath in, and then take a 4-second or a 5-second breath out. Just make sure that it's the same. And by seconds, I mean seconds, not counts. So it isn't 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's anxious breathing. But it's 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. That's the inhale. And then the exhale, 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. You'll find if you do that for a minute to a minute and a half to 2 minutes, that you will automatically begin to calm down and to feel less anxious. Now, square breathing, which I mentioned earlier, involves 2 other steps where you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 4 seconds, you breathe out for 4 seconds, and you wait 4 seconds before you take another breath. So you form a square. Breathing in 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, holding 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. Exhale 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, and then before you breathe in again, 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. That kind of breathing is automatically going to calm you down. Now, while you're focusing on your breathing, if you can notice where you've tensed up, and normally in an anxiety response, because it is part of the fight or flight response, you are going to tense up, notice it primarily, usually in 2 places of your body, and usually one place more than another. The first place, if you think of fighting, is going to be, you're going to tense up your neck, your shoulders, your arms. You might even be making fists with your hands. So while you're doing the breathing and the counting, if you can just kind of release that tension and let go and relax those parts of your body, that's also going to help. The other place you might feel it is around your waist or your hips or in your legs. A lot of people, when they become anxious, they begin to tap their feet rapidly, that kind of thing, which is obviously the body's flight response. And so again, if you can stop tapping, if you can relax those parts of your body while you're doing the breathing, the rhythmic slow breathing, you're automatically taking your body out of the physiological response of panic or anxiety. So that's the next level of the outside in approach. And then finally, what you want to look at is, what are you thinking? Now, when people talk about what they're thinking, more often than not, they assume it's just a cognitive process, that it's words, that it's the voice inside their head. And the voice inside your head could be doing all kinds of commentary about how horrible the situation is, how bad it's going to go for you, how weak you are, how helpless you are, that kind of stuff. But the truth is, in order for your body to physiologically respond, it has to have a fairly accurate representation or representation of the thing that you're afraid of. And this is where we begin to get into some of the subconscious and unconscious processes that cause anxiety attacks. And by this, I mean you're running a movie in your mind. You're doing something in your imagination. You're seeing something that is causing you to have that kind of response. It could be your coworker, the worker, your boss, somebody in your mind, unconsciously beyond the level of your awareness. You are playing a movie where you're standing in front of your boss and you're being chewed out, or you're chewing out your boss, or whatever the case may be. It could also be worry. It could also be something in the future that you're afraid of happening. And so you're playing the future event in your imagination as a mental movie, as though that situation were actually occurring. And because your mind is making those images or creating those mental movies, your body's responding as though the event is actually happening. So if you can become aware of the movie then that you're playing in your mind, and somehow bring yourself into the present moment. When you start focusing on your breath, you're already bringing yourself into the present moment. When you start focusing on what your mind is doing, you're already bringing yourself into the present moment. Another way to bring yourself into the present moment is to look around the room and create fill your mind with the world around you, so that the sensory input that you're getting is coming more externally to you rather than internally. So if you're just in a room by yourself but you're feeling anxious, or if you're in a situation, whatever the case may be, whatever's causing the anxiety, if you have the opportunity, you can go inside, look at the mental movie that you're playing, and you can begin to go outside and say to yourself, what are 5 things that I see? And just notice things on the wall, objects in the room, and say them mentally to yourself as you look at them. And then count down. You can start with 5 things you see, 4 things that you can feel or touch, or 3 things that you hear, or you can do 4 things that you hear and 3 things that you can feel or touch. And that's going to ground you in the present moment. If you want to take it a step further, then you can begin to play a different mental movie in your mind. You can begin to think about a pleasant memory that you had, a pleasant situation. You can begin to think about something as simple as your favorite meal. You can begin to think about a sexual experience that you want to enjoy, anything that's going to take your mind in that moment away from whatever movie is playing inside your brain. Now, remember, this is a practical method to use both to deal with anxiety in the moment, but it also requires practice and preparation. So you might want to take a few minutes every day where you're practicing being in the present moment by being alert with your physical senses, or by creating memories, safe places, maybe taking yourself to a beach, taking yourself someplace in nature in your mind that is pleasant for you and that is relaxing for you, and practice building that imagery, becoming the maker of your own movie, the conscious creator of your own movie. Another technique that can be very powerful when you become the conscious creator of your own movie is more often than not, when you're dealing with anxiety, you're thinking about a future scenario that is going to be a threat to you or is going to be painful for you. So begin to think about a future scenario that you can just create in your mind. It doesn't matter if it's going to happen. Just begin to create in your mind a different scenario that's positive. So if you found out that you had a sickness or a disease or an illness and you're feeling anxious about the treatments, chances are you're running movies about the treatments and how horrible it's going to be. You're taking yourself out of the present moment and into a potential future moment with the mental movie that you're playing in your mind. You can work with that future orientation by playing a different movie. Perhaps this movie is going into the doctor's office and having them say, wow, we've never seen someone heal so fast. We made a mistake. Things have changed. But begin to create a different mental movie around the very issue that you're dealing with. And as you practice your breathing, as you practice relaxing the muscles in your body, as you practice being in the present moment, being aware of your mental movies, and most importantly, as you, the producer and director of your own mental movie, begin to produce and direct a different mental movie that's positive and relaxing for you, the more you build that inside your brain, the easier it's going to be for you to actually shift your state in the moment that you have an anxiety attack or you feel a panic attack coming on. So that's the outside-in approach. If you can remove yourself from the situation and the circumstance, absolutely do it. That should be your first approach. Secondly, take control of your physiology by focusing on your breath, making it slow, deep, and rhythmic. And then thirdly, by looking at the mental movies that you're playing and changing and creating new mental movies that will create a better internal experience for you. I promise you, if you'll apply those 3 simple steps, you'll begin to experience the way out of anxiety. This is Aaron Tomlinson. I want to thank you for watching this video. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd love to invite you to do so. If you haven't turned on the notifications, I'd invite you to do that. And of course, as always, I'd love it if you'd like and comment below. I hope wherever you're at that it's great.